Fear, anxiety, depression, lack of will, self-doubt, self-loathing, lack of faith. Most of us probably experience these on a day-to-day. Emptiness lies at the top of the staircase of expectations, and only the people who reach the top realize that it's a fool's errand. One ticket for an empty theater showing your past failures, and you're there every weekend. Same old story, no Academy Award. The devil runs the concession stands and you still bought the popcorn. You don't even like this show. But it's better than the fear of the unknown, so we saturate ourselves in our sin. Our past we relive. We're used to the pain. It's comforting in a way. We allow who we were to change who we will be. But what if we lived every second of our lives as if God was with us fully? Because God is with you fully. Through your past, Christ prevailed. He tore the veil. Satan's plan derailed. But we can't help but feel the pain still. So you came to church. You sat in a pew with that hurt. Church, what would you do if I told you Jesus Christ was sitting right next to you?
When we left our story last week, Joseph had been in prison for a crime that he did not commit. Now, another thing that we need to learn here is that when we first met Joseph 4 weeks ago, he was 17 years old. He'd been beaten up and thrown in a pit by his brothers and sold off into slavery. Well, now Joseph is 30 years old, living in Egypt, and he's in the midst of prison. So we need to get this idea that for almost half of his life has not been what he thought it would be, or what it thought it should be. It went on this completely different trajectory. And so for almost half of his life, he's been in a foreign country, away from home, away from the people that he knows, away from the people that love him. So for almost half of his life, he's been separated from what he knows and knows the best. And so he's basically become Egyptian in so many ways. And so for this 13 years that he's been in Egypt, 10 of those have been in prison. So not only was he in a foreign land, he was in a foreign prison for 10 years. So here's what we know. Joseph had some amazing abilities that were given to him by God, and God used him in some pretty amazing ways to influence people. And one of those ways that he influenced people was through the interpretation of dreams. And so there had been a couple of guys that he encountered in prison, and Aaron talked about them last week, a cupbearer and a baker who he interpreted some dreams for. One of their dreams turned out really well, and one of them turned out really bad for the baker, really good for the cupbearer. And when the cupbearer left the jail that he was in, Joseph just asked him, he just said, just remember me. When the time comes, just remember me and remember who I am. Well, he doesn't. He gets out of jail and he goes on about his own business and his life like many of us would. We just start thinking about ourselves then, our own plans, our own dreams, and he forgets about Joseph completely. Well, one day the Pharaoh has this kind of strange, unsettling dream himself. And so he starts to ask some people around him what this dream means, and no one seems to know or understand what this dream might mean. Then the cupbearer remembers. He goes, oh shoot. There's this guy in prison that he interpreted some dreams that came to pass just exactly the way he said they would. And so he's got this amazing ability. Maybe he can help you. So Pharaoh sends for Joseph, gets Joseph out of prison, brings him into his house, and he says, can you interpret my dream? And Joseph says, nope, but God can. I can't, but God can. God can use me to do that, but it's not my power, it's God's power. I want to make you very, very clear of that. Now, we need to pause here for a second. For 13 years, his life has not been what he thought it should be. It's been difficult. It's been on a trajectory that he never thought. He was beaten up, abandoned by his brothers, sold into slavery, accused of a crime that he did not commit, spent 10 years in prison for that crime that he did not commit. And his first response when getting out of prison is giving God glory. Wow. I don't know about you, but I would probably give up a lot sooner than that. Think about this. He's been in the midst of this for 13 years and still gives God glory. I don't know about you, but sometimes when things don't go right for me, I don't give God 13 minutes. before I start shaking my fist at him and blaming him and accusing God. Why did you allow this to happen? Or why did you cause this to happen? That's not Joseph's attitude at all. He said, even in the midst of all this, everything that I have that's good comes from God. And so this is what he does. He tells the Pharaoh, I can't interpret your dream, but God can. So Pharaoh tells him the dream, and Joseph goes, hey, God's kind of telling me something here. Pharaoh says, what's the deal? He says, here's what's going to happen. He goes, for the next 7 years, things are going to be awesome around here. It's going to be a time of plenty. We're going to have extra of everything. There's going to be more money, more food. Everything's going to be great. Economic records are going to be shattered. Stock market off the chart. Everybody's employed. Everybody's happy. Everybody eats cake. It's going to be fantastic. But then, in the 8th year, things are going to go really bad. And they're going to go really bad. And there's going to be this famine that's going to just wipe out Egypt. And not only is it going to wipe out Egypt, it's going to wipe out the entire known world. So that's what your dream means. Pharaoh's a little unsettled by this, obviously. Okay, he gets this news and he goes, okay, it makes sense, but what do we do? And Joseph, being an opportunist, he goes, I got an idea. He says, why don't you put someone in charge for the next 7 years of collecting all the grain and storing it? Save percentages of everything that we have while we have an abundance. And then when this years of famine come, we will have enough to survive in Egypt. And not only will we have enough to survive in Egypt, but everyone else will come to us and we can sell the extra to them and we can actually get richer in the famine. While things are really bad, we can actually get richer. Pharaoh, being a guy of average intelligence, understands this is a good idea. And he says, okay, do we have anyone that can do this? So they start looking around. He goes, do we have anyone who has a degree in 7 years of good and 7 years of bad? Anyone go to school to study that? No, we don't have anybody that has experience in that. Anybody ever been through this before? No, we don't have that guy. Okay, Joseph, you're the guy. So in a matter of just a short period, Joseph moves from being in prison to being elevated to be the second in command of all of Egypt. And Scripture tells us that no decision was made in Egypt without Joseph's approval. Even Pharaoh said, Joseph, I'm going to ask your opinion before I do anything. So he goes from being in jail to having ultimate influence. Now we have to pause here because this is where I had a Chad moment. I'm like, okay, I've been in jail for 10 years for a crime that I didn't commit. Now all of a sudden, I'm second in charge of all of Egypt. What's the first thing I do? I find Potiphar and Potiphar's wife. The ones that put me in jail, I find them. And I send some of my friends to go meet them in a back alley somewhere. That's what I would probably do. I'd say, okay, you know what, Pharaoh, this is awesome, and I can't wait to get started tomorrow, but tonight, can I just do one thing? I'm going to beat the living stew out of these people, okay? And I'm going to put them in jail, I'm going to make them, that's what I would think. But no, that's not what Joseph does. He goes to work, and he goes to work diligently. He skyrockets to power, and he begins to go around all of Egypt, making sure that everything's taken care of, that everyone's storing everything correctly, okay? And as he's doing this, Pharaoh says, man, Joseph, you're doing a great job. I want to bless you. I want to give you a wife. I want you to have a family. And basically what he's saying is, Joseph, I want you to plant your roots here. I want this to be your new home. I want this to be your place that you call home. I want this to be yours. So he gives him a wife. And Scripture tells us that very quickly they had 2 sons. Now, the names of these boys are ultra important to the life of Joseph and to the life of this story. Now, there are some pretty amazing things that happen with names all throughout the Old Testament. If you take the name of Adam and you trace the lineage all the way through Jesus, the heads of the household, if you trace those male names and you study the meaning of each one of those males' names, those 26 generations there that happen, they tell the story of the gospel in names. That's how powerful names are. And so Joseph realizes this. So he names his very first son Manasseh. And this is what Manasseh means. It is because God has made me forget all of my troubles and all of my father's household. Now, this doesn't mean that he literally forgot about his dad. This doesn't mean that he literally forgot about what his brothers had done to him. But you know what it means? It means he moved on. He said, this isn't what I expected. This isn't where I thought I would be, but I'm gonna make the best of where I am. He goes, I'm going with this. I'm going to let God work with this. Now, remember what we talked about in week 2? God takes all the things from our past, all of our hurts, all of our bitterness, all of our anger, all of our rage, all of our resentment, all of those things. He takes all of those things from us. He says, I can work with that. I can work with that. I can work with your story. And so that's what Joseph knows here. And so he names his first son Manasseh. He says, I know that was my past, but this is where I am now, and God's telling his story through me right here, right now, and I'm going to celebrate that, and I'm going to live in that. And so he acknowledges that by naming his first son Manasseh. Now, his second son is named Ephraim, and Ephraim means this: God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering. God used what I gave him to do something really cool. 13 years in a foreign land, 10 years in prison, and yet he says, God has made me fruitful. Many of us would say, that's not fruitful. That guy's delusional. He has no idea what fruitful is. But no, you think about it. He's seen the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering. God used that place that I thought was difficult, that place I didn't want to be, that place I thought was strange, was foreign, was awkward, was difficult, was painful. He used that, and he's made me fruitful in that place. And he will do the same thing with your story. There are so many of us right now, our lives are not where they thought we would be, and we're in this place and like, this hurts, this is awful, this is painful. God can make you fruitful in the land of your suffering if we just let him go to work in us. If we just let him go to work in us. So, Joseph's life, it seems to be going pretty good. He's traveling around, he's making sure everything's going well, and he's managing things, and things are awesome. And it says this in Genesis chapter 41, verse 49. Joseph stored up huge quantities of grain like the sand in the sea. It was so much that he stopped keeping records because it was beyond measure. Do any of you have this problem with your bank account? There's just so much in there, you're like, I'm not even going to worry about it. Or are you the person that you're standing at the store contemplating buying an item, you're like, well, I better look on the app to see if there's enough money to cover this? What side of the spectrum are you on? We're probably all closer to this side than that side, but can you imagine having so much, you're like, I'm not even going to worry about it anymore. And that's what happens. Joseph's going around and he goes, guys, stop keeping charts. There is plenty for Egypt. There's plenty for anyone else, whoever's going to come. We're going to keep saving stuff, but it's just beyond anything that we could ever hope for or imagine. And so what happens is the famine starts. The famine starts. And so they have all these storehouses of grain and everything like that. And so here it is. Food supply is way down here. Demand for food supply is way up here. Okay, you don't have to be an economics major to know that if supply is here and demand is here, you can charge here. Right? So he's like, we can charge whatever we want for food. It's like buying popcorn at the movies. Okay? It always freaks me out. It's like $10 for popcorn. Do you know how much popcorn you can buy for $10? Most of it. Most of the global popcorn you can buy for $10. But at the movies, you get this little bag. You know why? Because it's buttery and awesome. And it's your only choice while you're there. Okay? They can charge whatever they want. It's like buying a drink at a ball game or parking at a concert. They can do whatever they want. Supply, demand, cost. So this is the world that Joseph is living in. And it says this in Genesis chapter 41, verse 57. All of the world came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe everywhere. So Joseph, he got to determine the price. Everybody that came to buy things and negotiate a price, they came to him and he says, yeah, well, we'll give you this. Nope. Well, grain's $25 a pound. Well, we'll give you $22 a pound. No. It's $25 a pound. Well, we'll give you $23 a pound. Nope. $24 a pound. Nope. $25 a pound. Yeah, $25. Well, we don't want to give you $25. Okay, next. That's as easy as it was. He could sell for whatever he wanted. And he had the power to do that. So, we jump to chapter 42, and we learn that the famine is now spread to the land of Canaan. This is where Joseph grew up. This is where his dad lives. This is where all of his stepbrothers and his one real brother still live. And the famine gets there. Now, so we know this has been happening for a while. Now, when the famine started, it wasn't like the next day everyone was just out of everything. That's not the way it works. You understand this. It's just like you at home. Like if you we don't have any money to buy food, you're going to empty all the stuff out of your fridge, right? You're going to eat, let's eat what's in the fridge, and then you go to the freezer. And then you start eating stuff out of the freezer that you don't even remember when you put it in the freezer. And then there's stuff in the freezer that you're like, why did we put this in the freezer? But you eat that because it's all that's left. Okay, so it takes a little while, for things to catch up. But eventually they catch up. And so we find out that Joseph's brothers and father, his father Jacob, and all of his brothers, they have some money, but they don't have any food. So they said, we've heard that there's food in Egypt. Why don't you go buy some food? So they go to Egypt with their bags full of money, ready to buy some grain, and they stand in line to meet Joseph. And when their time comes and they step before Joseph, Scripture tells us that they all bowed down before Joseph. Now, we got to go back to week 1 here. Can you imagine the memories from Joseph that are just flooding through his mind? Because one of the things that he did that really made his brothers mad was when he was living at home, he told his other brothers, hey, I had this dream last night that one day all of you are going to bow down and serve me. Isn't that cool? Older brothers don't want to hear that. Okay, they don't like that dream. They don't like that story. They will beat you up and throw you in a hole if you tell them that. Okay, this is what happens. But he floods back, and they bow down before him, and he's just like, oh my gosh. This is true. It came to pass. And so Scripture tells us that he recognizes them, but they don't recognize him. And we think today, it's like, how could that be? He's been gone for 13 years, remember. And not only is he gone for 13 years, he's changed cultures completely. So it means he's going to dress differently. He's going to speak differently. He's going to look differently. He's going to have different mannerisms now. Scripture tells us that he used a translator to talk to his brothers, even though he didn't need to, just to kind of keep up the facade. He used a translator to speak to them. Joseph, remember, he had been fruitful in the land of his suffering. He had evolved and grown. He's like, I'm going to live here. This is where I'm at. This is where God's got me, and this is what I'm going to do. It's not where I thought I would be. It's not I thought what should happen, but I'm going to flourish in this situation. And that's what he's doing. So he's growing and he's evolving. His brothers hadn't. They're all still living at home with dad. They're all still working in the fields, probably wearing very similar clothes. It would have been very easy for Joseph to recognize them and very difficult for them to recognize him. So he recognized them. And in this moment, I can't even imagine all the things that are flooding through his mind. You know what I could do to these guys right now? I can squash these guys. I can make them leave here with nothing. I can humiliate them. I can throw them in jail. I can do whatever I want in this moment. Now, here's where I make an assumption, and I'm being completely honest. This is not in the Scriptures. This is me making an assumption, and we can disagree on this and go to heaven. Okay, both still go to heaven. It's okay. All right? I think Joseph is trying to buy some time here because he's so overwhelmed with emotion and just the reality of this situation that he doesn't know what to do. So he says, you know what? I think you guys are spies. I think you're criminals. And he starts to challenge them. He wants them to prove who they are. And it says this in Genesis chapter 42, verse 10. No, my Lord, they answered, your servants have come to buy food. We are all the sons of one man. Your servants are honest men, not spies. He says, I don't believe you. And they say this in verse 13. But they replied, your servants were 12 brothers, the sons of one man who lives in the land of Canaan. The youngest is now with our father. This is Benjamin. This is his real brother, is still in Canaan with Jacob. And one is no more. You know who the one is that's no more? Joseph. They think he's dead. Can you imagine how Joseph felt when he heard that? My one true brother is home with dad. They sent all these jerks over here to get the food, and they don't even acknowledge that I'm even possible of being like, one is no more. I think this leads us to a huge principle that we need to take home with us today, and it's this. How we respond to past hurts determines our future progress. How we respond to past hurts determines our future progress. We have all been hurt. We've all been let down. We've all been betrayed. We've all been lied to. It's happened. And how we respond to those things will determine the trajectory of our futures. It affects where we go. Because it affects us by maybe we're carrying these big weights around with us, or we're free from those things because we've dealt with them. Christian author Vicky Courtney has written a book entitled this, Move On When Mercy Meets Your Mess. And she writes this about dealing with past hurts in our life. And I think this is so prudent, and I think it's so pertinent to this series and to our lives personally. But she says, here's some things that you need to do to deal with the mess of your past. First of all, you need to admit to the messes. You need to own your stuff. You need to own your stuff. Your life isn't where you thought it would be. Maybe because you made some poor decisions along the way. Maybe because you made some foolish decisions along the way. Or maybe you made some very ungodly decisions along the way. And it's taking you to a place that you didn't want to be. Or you never thought you would end up. Or maybe you're the victim of someone else's decisions and choices. Someone that was very close to you, that you loved, left. Someone that you love, lied. Someone that you love, hurt you. We need to own that stuff. And we need to admit to it. This happened to me. But you know what? God didn't cause this. God didn't cause them to make those choices. God didn't cause me to make my choices. We need to own that, and we need to admit to that stuff. We need to own it so that we can move on. The next thing she says is this: surround yourself with others who aren't afraid to be honest about their messes. You need a community of people around you that'll say, yeah, guess what? I've got those same things too. You're not the only one that's been hurt and betrayed and lied to and all those kind of things. You're not the only one. I've got a story like that too. We need to be encouraged and challenged and inspired and build confidence because of the stories of the people around us. Next, she writes this: shift your focus from your sorrow to your Savior. Joseph is a prime example of this. After 10 years in prison, 10 years in prison for a crime that he did not commit, his first response to Pharaoh was like, I can't do that. God can, but I can't. God can, I can't. His focus was always on the one who could bring salvation and not his sorrow or his situation. Next, use what you've learned to help others. Let your story guide others and encourage other people. Your story is not your own. Your story is God's story being told through you. Your story is God's story being told through you. It's not your private story. It's your personal story, but it's not a private story. Next, she writes this: live to please God and not other people. I think a lot of us, we wallow in resentment and bitterness and sorrow and self-doubt and all these kind of things, and just this unfulfilled kind of life and this misery because we're trying to please people. And here's the harsh reality, and this is a brutal thing to say, but I love you and I'm going to be honest with you. We spend a lot of time trying to please people that don't even like us, and they sure don't love us. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. We try to spend time pleasing people that don't really even think about us that much. When we should spend our focus trying to please God. Live to please God and not other people. Next, she writes this: eliminate idols. Now, a lot of us have an idea about what an idol is, and we think, oh, it's some little statue that you would keep in your house, and you burn things to it and pray to it and all this kind of stuff. And, it's kind of creepy and whatever, okay? That can be an idol, and if you have that in your house, I would love to talk to you about that, okay? Don't bring it to my house to show me. We'll meet at a neutral location, I promise, okay? Okay, but here's a quick definition of an idol. An idol is anything that comes between you and God. Anything that's between you and where God wants you to be is an idol. If you think about something more than you think about God, it's an idol. Ouch. Is that your job? Is that your spouse? Is it your children? Is it your career? Is it your hobby? Is it your team? What do you think about more than you think about God? That's an idol. It says eliminate those things. Get rid of those things. Put priority on what's important. The only way Joseph could maintain an attitude all throughout those 10 years of prison, of saying it's all about God, was he eliminated the idols. He eliminated those things. Great words by a great author. So let's get back to the story of Joseph, okay? So Joseph, he's got his brothers there, and I believe he's kind of making things up as he's going along. He's trying to buy time. He says, you guys are spies. No, we're not spies. And he says, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to order one of you to go back to Canaan and get Benjamin while the rest of you stay here. And why does he want to do that? He wants to see his brother. He wants to see his brother. He wants to make sure that they're not lying about his brother, because they're like, Benjamin's going to be in the same boat as I. Maybe they left him in a hole. I want to see my brother. I want these guys to prove that he's okay. And I love my brother, and I want to see him. So he says, we're going to do this. And they're like, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. And he goes, okay, I'm going to give you 3 days in prison to think about it. I think Joseph has a very satisfying moment right here. It's like, okay, 3 days in jail. Let's cool your heels a little bit here and try the food. It's great. He's like, I've been there. It's wonderful. He's like, okay, 3 days in jail. So after 3 days in jail, they decide that they're willing to negotiate a little bit now. After only 3 days, remember Joseph was there 10 years. He decides this. He goes, okay, here's what we'll do. We're going to keep one brother here. The rest of you go back and get Benjamin and then bring him back, and I'm going to keep this other brother as collateral. Okay, now Scripture tells us that this brother that's kept here, his name is Simeon. Now, we don't know how Simeon was chosen to stay. We don't know if they had some royal rumble inside the jail cell. We don't know if they did rock, paper, scissors. We don't know if they had an arm wrestling tournament. I don't know what happened, but somehow Simeon gets chosen to stay. Okay? They say, okay, the rest of you go back, and then we'll make sure that you guys get taken care of. So Joseph fills up all their bags with grain. Fills them all up to capacity. And then what he does is he takes their food and he takes the money that they gave for the food and he puts it in the bags with the food. So not only does he give them all the food, he gives them their money back. So we're talking about free groceries here. Now, under most circumstances, this would be a really cool blessing, right? Just think about this. You go to Target, you fill up a couple of carts with groceries and stuff and all this kind of stuff. You go through the checkout line, you pay your bill or whatever, and the manager just comes and he runs out to the car. He says, wait. You're a customer of the day, and we're going to give you our money back, and we just want to bless you. Have a great day. You'd be like, yeah! You do the happy dance in the Target parking lot, right? That'd be a cool situation. This is not a good situation for these guys. They're like, we're already on thin ice with this guy. He's put us in jail for 3 days. He's making demands about our family. He's wanting us to prove who we are, that we're not spies. Now he's going to think that we stole this stuff. We're in trouble. But do they go back to Egypt? No, they go home and they tell Jacob. They take all this stuff home, and Jacob's like, you got to be kidding me. And he said, now here's the deal, Dad. We got to go back. And this time we got to take Benjamin with us. They're not going to let Simeon go unless we take Benjamin back. Jacob freaks out. He freaks out. And this is what he says in Genesis chapter 42, verse 36. Their father Jacob said to them, you have deprived me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more. He's already counted Simeon off as dead. And now you want to take Benjamin. This is a very wounded man speaking here. A very unconfident, very pessimistic man. His whole life now is wrapped up in Benjamin. Why? Because Benjamin is the only son that he has left that's from his wife Rachel, the one that he loved. So, and she died years ago. So Benjamin is the only thing that he has linking him to Rachel, the woman of his life, the love of his life. And he goes, you're not taking Benjamin. And then he says this in verse 38. But Jacob said, my son will not go down there with you. His brother is dead, talking about Joseph, and he is the only one left. If harm comes to him on the journey you are taking, you will bring my gray head down to the grave in sorrow. Can you imagine what these brothers thought right then? Do you know what their dad just told them? None of you even exist. None of you even matter. Benjamin's the only one left. He's the only one I care about. Man, you talk about a wound. I bet there's some of us that have heard things like that from people in our family, maybe even our parents. You've been told that you were inadequate. You were told, why can't you be more like your brother? Why can't you be more like your sister? You're worthless. You'll never amount to anything. This is what these brothers were told right then by Jacob. He said, he's the only one left. You guys don't even matter. You don't even matter. Can you imagine the tension in that room? Can you imagine the guilt, the fear, the resentment, the anger that's in that room? I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. But here's what I think leads us to our next principle. You can never escape your past until you come clean. That stuff's going to go with you. You're going to drag it with you until you come clean. And so I would ask you this. Are you like one of those brothers? Are you dealing with a tension, a guilt, a fear, a resentment, an anger that you're just holding around? You are never going to be free from that stuff until you come clean and deal with it. And you say, you know what? What an awful thing they did to me. That was not true. It comes from the very bowels of hell, those lies and those words. And it's hurtful. But here's the reality. Hurt people hurt people. And Jacob is hurting. He is a wounded, hurt man. His favorite son was taken away and died, or so he thinks, and he doesn't think he can trust any of his brothers or any of his sons, and he's holding on to what he has left. Jacob is a hurt man, and in his hurt, he hurts other people. My guess is that there are a lot of us, when we think about where our life should have been and should be and all that kind of stuff, and the decisions of some other people took us off that trajectory, we're the victims of hurt people hurting people. And so here's what I want to encourage you. Do not carry that on in your family tree. Do not be a hurt person that continues to hurt people. Don't. You are never going to escape your past until you come clean. And just admit, man, what happened to me was wrong. It was awful. And it's taking me a place I didn't want to be, but I'm going to let God work with it. God says I can work with that. I'm going to let him do that. So, he says, Benjamin is not going to Egypt. This is where we pick up the story again. He's not going. Now, after about 3 months, Scripture tells us, these guys start to get hungry again because the food that they brought back from Egypt, it's all dwindling and there's not a lot left. And so finally, this one brother, Judah, he kind of mans up and he goes into his dad's house and he says this, we are going to Egypt, we are taking Benjamin, or we are going to die. You hear me, old man? We're going to Egypt, we're taking Benjamin, or we are all going to die. And so Jacob realizes the dire situation that they're in right now. And he says, okay, I understand this needs to happen, but this time what we're going to do things my way. I want you to take 3 times more money than you think you need, and I want you to bribe this guy so that he'll just stop playing these games with you. Bribe him. Give him what he wants. I want my whole family back here. So that's what they do. They head back to Egypt, all of them, Benjamin included, to get some food and to rescue their brother Simeon. Well, as they get into Egypt, they're recognized, and Joseph identifies them. He says, hey, I want these guys to come into my house, and I'm going to give them a big feast. I want to have a big feast for this family at my house. So sure enough, they come over to Joseph's house that night, and they all sit down to a feast, and Benjamin walks in to Joseph's house. And so Joseph sees his brother Benjamin for the first time in over 13 years. He sees his real brother. And Scripture tells us that he was so overcome with emotion that he had to leave the room. Probably at this joy in seeing Benjamin and this anger at his brothers. And he knew that he couldn't just go and hug and embrace Benjamin because then the rest of them would be like, what is going on here? Who is this guy? And people would know who he was. So he just leaves the situation completely. But he sets his brothers up, and this is what he does. He goes, okay, tomorrow when you guys leave, this is what we're going to do. We're going to fill your bags up again with all the grain you want. We're going to take all that money, even the 3 times more money that you brought, and we're going to put it back in their bags also. They don't know this because we're going to put it back in their bags also. And then he says, this is what I want you to do. He tells one of his workers, his servants, he goes, I want you to take my cup. Now we got to pause here for a second. Remember the story about the cupbearer and the baker? Okay, very, very important jobs because they were the protectors of the Pharaoh. Okay, and they were the one that guarded the Pharaoh's food. They tested Pharaoh's food to make sure that no one was trying to poison him to kill him. Very lucrative job, very high turnover. Okay, very high turnover in this job. Okay, But Joseph's cup would have been one that the cupbearer would have known. It's like, that's Joseph's cup. Do not go anywhere near that. If you go anywhere near that, I can kill you because you're threatening an official in Egypt. This was his lifeline, this cup. He goes, I want you to take my cup, and I want you to put my cup in Benjamin's bag. Put my cup in Benjamin's bag, and then let him go. And so that's what his servants do. They fill up their bags more than they can handle. All of the money goes back, and they put the cup in Benjamin's bag, and they send them on their way. Then it says he sent one of his stewards after they'd left the town to go and catch him. He says, he catches up to them, and he goes, hey, what are you guys doing? They're like, what are you talking about? He goes, why would you rob the guy that threw this big feast for you last night? I'm like, what are you talking about? We didn't rob him. He goes, oh yeah, one of you took his cup. And remember, that's a threat to his life. He goes, so guess what? You're all going to come back to Egypt. And they're like, no, we didn't take it. I said, okay, we'll search your bags. And so they start searching bags. They go through the oldest to the youngest. And they get to Benjamin's bag. And sure enough, they reach into Benjamin's bag and they pull out his cup. And they're all like, oh my gosh, what happened? Benjamin's probably like, I didn't do it. I promise I didn't do it. We knew nothing about it. He says, doesn't matter. We're going back to Egypt. We're going back. And so then they go back and they stand before Joseph. And Joseph says this, here's the deal. I'm not going to keep all of you for one man's sin. So I'm just going to keep Benjamin and the rest of you can go. See what he does? He goes, I'll keep Benjamin, the rest of you get out of here. Well, then Judah, he's like, oh my gosh, I made this promise to my dad that if I got to take care of Benjamin. And this is what Judah says to Joseph in Genesis chapter 44, beginning of verse 30. So now if the boy is Benjamin, is not with us when I go back to your servant my father, and if my father whose life is closely bound up with the boy's life, he's like, this is my dad's favorite. They're closely bound together. If he sees that the boy isn't there, he will die. Your servants will bring the gray head of our father down to the grave in sorrow. Your servant guaranteed the boy's safety to my father. I said, do not bring him back to you. If I do not bring him back to you, I will bear the blame before you, my father, all of my life. Now then, please let your servant remain here. He says, please keep me. Please let your servant remain here as my Lord's slave in place of the boy, and let the boy return with his brothers. How can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? No, do not let me see the misery that would come on my father. He's like, bro, you got to help me out here. They're in a horrible, horrible situation. Horrible situation. This is not where their life thought it would take them. They're in a situation right now where they're being victimized by Joseph's decisions and what Joseph's doing. Their life is going in a trajectory that they didn't want. See the parallels in this story? So this is what I would do. I would ask you this question. What would someone do in exactly your circumstances if they were absolutely confident that God was with them? If someone stepped into your life right now, knowing everything that you know, and they were 100% sure that God was with them, what would they do? What would they do? I'm guessing that's a good place for you to start. I'm guessing that's a good place for you to start. Because you can be that person. These brothers could be that person right now if they choose to be. So you know what happens next? Next week we're going to talk about it. I love doing that more than you'll ever know. So much joy and gratification comes to me from that. I'm kind of sadistic that way, I'm sorry. But here's the deal. All of our lives are not where we thought we should be. Maybe you have a health issue. Maybe you've had a relational issue. Maybe you've had a career issue. I don't know. But all of us have had something in our life that's taken us from where we thought our life should be. But if someone stepped into your spot right now, if they stepped into your shoes and your situation, and they were 100% confident that God was with them, what would they do in that situation? Would they come clean? Would they acknowledge God in the midst of their sorrow and suffering? Would they share their story with others? Would they serve others? Would they admit their mess? My guess is yes. And that's the invitation that all of us have today. It's to say my past doesn't have to determine my future. It's brought me to where I am, but it doesn't have to determine my future. And my future can be significantly better than my past, even though I thought it wasn't where it's not where I thought it should be, or I expected it to be. It can be better than I ever hoped or imagined. As I told you before, I had the opportunity to go to University of Oklahoma out of high school, and I wanted to be a civil engineer or an architect or something like that. God had a different plan for me. And I'm going to tell you right now, I wouldn't trade what I do to do that for anything. I thought I knew. I thought I knew what I wanted, and God's like, no, I think you need to do this. Best decision I ever made was to say, okay, God, it's not my story, it's yours. You tell your story however. Best decision I ever made. It was difficult at times. It was difficult. And it was confusing, and it was dark sometimes, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. Every one of us has the ability to start over again today. Understanding that God is 100% with you and 100% for you. And what would that person do if they stepped into your situation, knowing that? If you were 100% confident that God is with you and for you, how would your life be different? Let's pray together. God, we say thanks for the way that you show up in our lives, the way that you take care of us. And we thank you for the ability in the name of your Son, Jesus, to come to you today and ask for forgiveness. Because of what he did on the cross some 2,000 years ago, we can own our mess. We can say we're sorry for the bad decisions that we've made, the poor choices that we've made along the way. And we can give those things to you. And you say, I can work with that. Because what you want is a heart. And when we give our hearts to you, you say, I can deal with it. And God, you can do just like you did with Joseph. We can prosper in the land of our suffering. This isn't where we wanted to be or thought where we thought we would be. But God, you can prosper us in this if we'll just give our lives over to you. So give us, God, the strength to choose your ways over our ways in every circumstance and situation. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.